Kombat. Yeah, I wasn't feeling the idea of my video getting a copyright claim for using the actual theme song, so just decided to sing it. So Mortal Kombat is the newest movie adaptation of the acclaimed video game franchise Mortal Kombat. I don't think you can legally call yourself a gamer if you've never played Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat is one of the cornerstones of video games, especially when it comes to fighting video games. I mean, it's Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, Super Smash Bros. That's your trifecta of the greatest fighting video game franchises ever. If you ask me anyway. And you know, as we know, Hollywood has this history of trying to make good movie adaptations to certain video games, but most of the times it doesn't work. Mortal Kombat has had its attempts. We got the first Mortal Kombat movie adaptation in 1995. It wasn't terrible, but it still wasn't where we wanted it to be. And then it got a sequel in 97 called Mortal Kombat Annihilation, which was, it was just, you know what, let's just move on. So yeah, this is a movie that's clearly been in development for a while. Clearly they've wanted to make another Mortal Kombat movie, and now 24 years later, we finally got it. And I will say, as a movie, this is enjoyable, and it does have a lot of potential. But it definitely has its give and take. First of all, let's just get into it right now. The fight scenes in this movie are fucking awesome. Brings back a lot of nostalgia. It's so great seeing certain characters use the abilities that they're known for. Liu Kang and his fire, Kung Lao and his spinning death hat, Sub-Zero doing his Sub-Zero things. I mean, it's so great seeing just these characters have the powers that they have. It's awesome to see. And the fight scenes, for the most part, are done really well. The choreography is great. Some of the camera work with them isn't always the best. It's not one of those fight scenes that just flows all together all that well. It's a lot of jump cuts sometimes. It does make the scenes a little bit jarring. I do really appreciate the violence in this movie. This movie is rated R, and it's rated R for, well, you know, there's a ton of fucks in this movie, but I will say this movie is bloody and it's violent as hell, but it needs to be. Come on, you play any Mortal Kombat game, the fatalities are fucking brutal. When the fatalities happen in this movie, guess what? It's pretty fucking brutal. And people get their heads crushed, their hearts ripped out, someone gets, like, basically sawed completely in half. It's intense, it's brutal, and it's awesome. But getting into some of the give and take, the story in this movie, it's pretty simple. We have this new guy, Cole Young. He is a descendant of Scorpion, and he doesn't really have any powers yet, but he has the Mortal Kombat marking on him, which says, you have been chosen, you have a power in you that's ready to be awakened, and you have also been summoned to fight in the Mortal Kombat tournament that's going to save the world. You know, basically, it's this guy, Cole Young, and a few others going to this temple to train with Raiden and other members of, you know, the Mortal Kombat Alliance or tournament. I can never remember. What's the name of the group? Oh yeah, the Earth Realm. I would say I had a brain fart, but I actually just looked it up. Yeah, that's what I'll say right here. This movie isn't necessarily Mortal Kombat tournament itself. I mean, you get kind of like a mini tournament at the end where, you know, they each go off and they all fight somebody, but you don't get the legit Mortal Kombat tournament in here. You feel like this movie's meant to lead into possibly the next movie where we get a legit Mortal Kombat tournament. So that's what I will say right there. This movie does feel a little bit like setup. It's like, alright, let's get some characters together, let's get their powers developed, and then in the following movie, we'll have them really fight. So that's what I will say. Story-wise, you see what they're doing, but it does leave you a bit unfulfilled. Where I also definitely felt unfulfilled is with a lot of the characters in this movie. Some characters really get some time to shine and time to really stand out, and time to really explore upon them. Others, not as much. In particular, I have a bit of a problem with Cole Young being the main character of this movie, simply because Cole Young is a completely original character. He's never been a character in the Mortal Kombat games. And he got the most time to shine. It's kind of like, who is this guy? What are his powers? What does he do? He does eventually develop powers, and we do learn about his backstory, but the thing is, like, as fans, we don't really have any attachment to him. Part of me thinks it would have been better if they took a legit character from Mortal Kombat and, you know, we explored more on their backstory and their powers being developed, so that way you get more on board with them, and then, you know, when they discover what they're capable of doing, or we see something that we remember about their story, you're a little more excited for it. You're a little more on board with it. Part of me does wonder if maybe this movie's meant to be a way of, hey, this is how we're going to include Cole Young into the future games. I guess it could have been set up for future Mortal Kombat games. Like, here, now this new character shows up, now you know where he came from. But there are iconic characters that really get time to shine. Sub-Zero in this movie is fucking awesome. He's the villain in the story, and he is a damn good villain. I mean, when this dude just shows up and there's ice forming, and it's snowing, and it's getting cold. It feels like a horror movie. Like from the opening scene, when you see what he does and you see what he's capable of doing with his powers, you just immediately know, it's like, yeah, this guy is bad news. This guy's gonna kill anyone that gets in his way. Right, his powers, his voice, his appearance, the way he fights, he's a really menacing dude. I will say, one character that I do wish got a little bit more time to shine is Scorpion. I don't think it's really a spoiler me saying that. I mean, Scorpion's on the poster. You know he's in the movie. He's just not in the movie the way you might expect him to be in the movie. But in the very beginning, you get his backstory, kind of how his rivalry with Sub-Zero began. Then you get like little fragments of him throughout the movie. Then finally he shows up at the end to have a big, massive fight. And don't get me wrong, that fight is fucking awesome. It's by far and away the best part of the movie. I fucking love that fight. I could watch that fight all the time. But I don't know, I mean, it's Scorpion. I would have loved to have seen more of Scorpion. One character that definitely gets time to stand out, though, is Kano. And I gotta say, I really liked Kano in this movie. He's this snarky, douchebag, cocky asshole. He's got a ton of really funny one-liners. He talks shit to, like, everyone in this movie. He doesn't give a fuck about anything. And it's pretty funny. If there's a character in this movie that's supposed to be in any form of comic relief, it's definitely him. But again, as I mentioned earlier with Scorpion, there are more characters that you may know and love that do kind of get left in the dust a bit. Like in the beginning, it feels like Jax is going to have a really big role, and then really, he's kind of out of it for a while. Liu Kang and Kung Lao, we don't really know anything about their backstories. You get like a couple minutes of story time here and there with them, but you don't really see where they come from, what they, you know, how they became what they are. I mean, that was disappointing, especially for Kung Lao. Kung Lao was my go-to guy in Mortal Kombat. I would have loved to see a little bit more of him, or at least, you know, his backstory. Even the ones of the Outworld, the ones who are supposed to be like the villains of this movie, the ones who are going to try to take over Earth with this tournament. Aside from Sub-Zero, you don't really see much of any of them. That's what I think is the real flaw in this movie. I think they tried to put all these characters together too quickly. I watched a review for another YouTuber, and they had the idea, it's like, maybe they should have taken these characters, given them their own movies, or at least put a few in one movie, and show their backstory, show their development, show how they get their powers, and, you know, then you could kind of bring all them together after a few movies, let this Mortal Kombat movie be like the Avengers, and then all the characters have had their backstory, and now they can all just fight in this massive tournament, and it would be amazing. I'm honestly shocked they didn't really want to take that route. I mean, honestly, in that case, you could have made a lot more money with this franchise and turned it into an MCU kind of, you know, movie franchise. If you want video game movies to really succeed, that could have been a way you could really have just, you know, set a new bar with it. The reason I'm not bagging that hard on the character development necessarily is because I do know more is coming. Like, this movie is intended to be the first of a new franchise for Mortal Kombat. We will probably get a sequel at some point, and we will probably build on these characters more and more. And I'm not opposed to it. This movie definitely wasn't perfect, but this movie definitely showed potential. I'm like, I think this movie could eventually lead into something really, really special. Really hope they play their cards right, because I would love to see what this could turn out to be, because it could be something really good. But all in all, Mortal Kombat, as I mentioned, it's an enjoyable movie. The fight scenes, for the most part, are really awesome. A couple in particular are great. The movie is violent as hell, as it should be. The movie has a ton of profanity, as I think it should. A few of the characters really stand out. A lot of them, though, not as much. It's a very simple story that is a bit underwhelming. You feel like this movie is meant to be set up for what's going on in the future. But in the end, I see a lot of potential, and I'm really rooting like hell that the potential reaches what it could be. So that's all I gotta say, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video. Don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.